Right, next we have Lorcan. Take it away.
Thanks very much. Okay, I'm going to do this talk in kind of two different parts. I'm going to do a few slides at the beginning to kind of tee up what we're going to be working on. And then I'm going to work through some code examples. So I'm going to treat this kind of as like a pairing exercise where I'm going to be doing all of this kind of fresh. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to be looking on Google and Stack Overflow for answers. And so to make this a little bit more fluid, I'm going to be expecting you all to help me out and shout out like when I do typos, when I make mistakes. So it's going to be a little rough and wild, but we'll have some fun with it. So what is this? This is a common thing that I see with new folk to Ember is component integration tests and like understanding how to write component integration tests, what they are, how do you do them, like what are like good approaches. So that's really what this talk is about. It's about kind of talking about the things that I've learned, the things that I've seen in terms of how to write these tests well. And because you're never really sure if you're doing things right, I'd love to get feedback from you in terms of like, that's a horrible way of doing things, or you should consider doing it this way. So like we should kind of have a dialogue over the course of this. So why am I giving this talk? I love components and I love testing. Like I really love testing. So I'd like to start by taking a few straw polls. What Ember version are people on? Who's on like Ember 3? Fantastic, okay. Who's on like 2.18? Okay. Who's like pre-2.12? Okay, so we're all pretty up to date, pretty recent. Okay, that's great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be writing code in a number 3 like world. But the things that you see me do, there are ways of doing all of this in previous versions of Ember using code mods, and I'm happy to talk to anyone after this talk to explain how you can kind of get yourself to that place in your code base. Okay. Lily kind of talked about this a little bit, this concept of closure actions and data down actions up. Is this something everyone is familiar with? The concept of passing closure actions down into components, them doing things and bubbling up those actions. Can I get a silent nod of heads for people who understand this? Can I get a silent shaking of heads for people who don't? Wow, some people didn't do anything at all. You all know who you are, okay? I'm just saying. I'm going to assume that everybody knows mostly about data down actions up because nobody shook their heads. Okay. Finally, component integration tests. Hands up who hasn't written one. Okay, a couple of people haven't written them. Hands up people who feel totally comfortable with them, write them all the time, know how to test actions. Fantastic. Okay, this is great. Okay, let's talk testing. We all know what the testing pyramid looks like. This slide and the next slide are two slides by Ben Limmer. I'll share these slides afterwards, and there's a link to this. In kind of mature software development, we have lots and lots of unit tests. We have maybe less integration tests. We have even less acceptance tests, and maybe above this we have manual testing. Maybe we have a QA team and humans who are actually testing it. And this is like normal software development. But in Ember, it doesn't really look like this. In Ember, at least in my experiences, it looks a little bit like this. We don't tend to write many unit tests, if at all. We might write some ones for particularly hairy computed properties or some tests for models, for the relationships between models, maybe. We might write some acceptance tests, some high-level tests that drive through the app, maybe test our happy paths and ensure that people are able to log in or people are able to do important things that are critical to your business. The vast majority of the tests, certainly that I find myself writing, are integration tests, specifically component integration tests. And for that reason, I think it's really important that we know how to do this. We know how to do it well. Does anyone disagree with this? Again, a silent shake of the head. Does anyone find that they spend a lot of time writing unit tests? Does anybody find that they spend a lot of time writing acceptance test? Okay, a few nods. Who's spending the most of their time writing integration tests? Wow, still a lot of silence, still a lot of just like poker face.
You never ask who's not writing tests.
No, I would never ask that question. That was a very cynical question. Everyone writes tests. We know this. Okay, so we've written a new component, or we're writing a new component. What do we actually want to test here? So from a component's perspective, things that I'd like to see in a component is, like, did the component render correctly? Like, does it look the way it should look? And what I mean by that is, if a component takes a bunch of inputs, did it render according to the inputs? Does it look the way it should given the things that we gave it? And then the other thing that I really want to know is, like, does my component behave the way I expect it to behave? And really, in a kind of data down, actions up type world where some components have internal behavior, but they also have a contract with their invoker where they'll pass an action up if something happens in the component. Really, what I want to test is I want to see, like, did our actions work correctly? So two things that I really care about, like, did we render correctly according to our inputs? And did we satisfy the contract between the component and the invoker? So that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to talk about a couple of really useful add-ons. The first is Ember test selectors. This was built by Simple Labs, based in Berlin. And the second is QUnit DOM, also by Simple Labs. I would like to hope that by the end of this session, if you're not using these, you'd at least consider using these add-ons. I think they're absolutely excellent. And then, like, I'm going to do a little bonus feature, which is we're going to take a really quick look at Ember CLI update. So one of us is on the Ember 3 kind of world. We're going to see how this one simple trick could get your app all the way up to the latest version. Probably not, but this is super useful, super helpful. Okay, and the way we're going to do this workshop is there was a workshop at Dublin.js a couple of months ago, I guess. Rory and Serena built a Hacker News app with Ember. So we're going to use this app that they built as a place to write our new tests. This is an open source project, so you can feel free to, like, visit this and play along as I'm writing the tests. And what I'd like to do, we'll try this. What I'd like to do is, over the course of the workshop, I'll produce pull requests, and I'm looking for, like, feedback from the audience. Like, if anyone thinks I've reached a point where, like, I've got something good enough to ship, I want, like, people to shout out, ship it, okay? Like, ship it, okay? So can we just try that?
Ship it!
I don't have anything yet to ship. Okay, but that's what we're going to do. Okay, we'll see. And so I'm going to need people in the audience to review these PRs, and I'm going to need one of the maintainers, maybe Rory or Serena, to actually merge the code. In terms of notes, like, if you had to leave, like, in 10 minutes time and didn't want to go through the whole exercise, most of what there's an article written by Miguel Camba with Dockyard on modern Ember testing. There's a link to this in the presentation. This is an absolutely excellent blog post. Everyone who's interested in testing in the direction that Ember is going in terms of testing should really read this and internalize it. In terms of test selectors, Ember Map has an excellent video. It's a free, publicly accessible video that shows why you might want to use test selectors and how you can use them. So a lot of what I'm covering here is kind of covered in that video as well. They do it better. And then Tobias Benek gave a presentation at EmberConf. This, again, is freely available. He talks about the next generation of testing in Ember, and this is an absolutely excellent talk. When I watched this talk, I, like, opened my laptop and started, like, installing add-ons and, like, doing things. It's just absolutely incredible. So how's that sound? Great, fantastic. Okay, so I'd like everyone to take 5 minutes, grab a refreshment, and we'll pair. And just kind of to talk a little bit about what we might need to do. This is my editor. This is the size of text we're going to be dealing with. I can make the text a little bit bigger, but I would really, I'll leave this up on the screen. I'd really encourage people to sit somewhere that they can comfortably read this. If that means everyone sits like right up here, that's totally fine. The other thing is, I'm not going to be able to type and use a microphone at the same time. So I'll try to be loud, but if you're at the back, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to follow on.
I'm going to mix them.
Are there mic stands?
Yes.
Okay, we'll try that. So please, like, take 5 minutes, get a cup of tea, chocolate, whatever you need, and sit somewhere that you can see this. If anyone can't see this or needs it to be bigger, like, you can sit up here or just come up to me and I'll make the font size bigger.
If anybody doesn't know up the front, we've got them on both the TVs as well, so you can participate in your TV.
All strapped in? Okay, let me show you what I've done. I cloned this repository. This mic isn't going to work. I'm going to have to put the mic down. How's that? Can people still hear me at the back? Okay, cool. Okay. So this is the repository, and I've cloned the repository and I've run npm install just because I didn't want to take 5 minutes at the beginning to get everything running. In this tab, I'm running Ember serve, and in this tab, I'm running Ember test. And this is what the app looks like, and this is the tests. Okay, so all our tests pass, which is great. So what I'd like to do is kind of start by maybe let's have a little tour of this app. Maybe let's see what's going on here. So we're on front page, on the front page root. So let's see what that looks like. If I go to the roots file, I can see that the model hook on the models hook on front page makes a request to all the items, whatever they are. I don't know what they are. And it grabs a page of those. Presumably this corresponds to what Hacker News is actually doing. So let's go check out Hacker News. AI software that helps doctors diagnose light specialists is approved by FDA. Fascinating. Okay. And that's what we see here. Okay, so this list, hallucinogenic deep refinement learning using is here. Okay, so this list corresponds to this list. So let's take a look at what that looks like. The template, cool. The template looks like this. It's actually pretty simple. It just has a single component, item list component. So let's take a look and see what that is. So there's the template file and the JavaScript file. Let's start with the JavaScript file. Okay, this is great. It doesn't really do anything. It's pretty simple. So let's look at the template file. Okay, so this component is taking items and it's taking an action mark as read, and it's looping through each of the different items, and inside there's another component and a HR tag. Okay, so I'm guessing that this is this list. See these HR tags? These are going to correspond to these guys. Okay, so this seems okay. Let's look at the item component and see what that does. We'll start with the JavaScript again. Great. It doesn't do a whole lot in there. This is going to be easy. So we take a look at the template. Okay, there's a little bit more here. So this structure, let's go ahead and take a look at the DOM and see if we can line up this structure with what we see in the DOM. So we can see we've a list of things. We can see a div. This, I think, corresponds to this. Let's open it up. We have a link. Great. That looks like this. We have another div and then another link. Okay, so that's this link at the bottom. Let's open up the div. We have a span, which corresponds to this thing, item points, points by, okay. So that's this, 127 points by, okay, this looks good. And then there's a span in here with an icon, I guess, and that corresponds to this. And we can see in this span there's a data Ember action. Okay, so this, I think this corresponds to this action. Okay, so that's pretty much it. This is a very, very simple app. We've got two components. So now we go and look at the tests. So we go into integration. Oh, and there's no tests. Now, I'm being a little bit of an asshole. There were tests here and I deleted them. So the people who put together this app are top quality engineers. I'm the bad guy here, okay? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to act as if you're coming to a part of the app that has components that maybe isn't very well tested. And this is kind of the approach that I'd like us to consider. And this approach works equally well if you're creating a brand new component. This is the same kind of process that you should run through. Now, I want to do this all using best practices, and I told you I was going to kind of cheat a little bit. So this app uses Ember 2.16, and really I want the good stuff. So I'm going to bump this up to the latest version of Ember. Just see if we can do it. And so I mentioned this Ember CLI add-on that's available. This is a really, really interesting tool, but I'm sure it's really difficult to use. So let's take a look at the instructions. Okay, so I can install it, and then I can run it. Okay, let's try this. So let's open a command line. I'm going to kill my testing. I'm going to run this. Okay, and then I'm going to run Ember CLI update. Okay, it's done a bunch of stuff, and it's telling me, it's telling me it wanted to switch branches. It's telling me there's some kind of merge conflict. So let's just see what's happening. Okay, so it looks like there's a problem with this file. So let's just have a look. Okay, can everybody read this? Okay, so it looks like there's a problem over here. So it looks like this should have a comma. It doesn't have a comma. I'm okay with that. I'm going to get rid of that. And then if I scroll down, can I see any more conflicts? No? Okay, that's great. Let's save that. Let's add it. Okay, everything looks good. Let's see what it did. So this is GitHub desktop. I'm just going to run through the files really quick. So I made some changes to the ESLint configuration. I think I'm okay with that. I made a change to the Travis file. I made some change to this file, to this file. I don't really know what I'm doing here, but if I go to the package.json, I can see that I'm now on Ember 3.1, which is great. And it's updated Ember data also, it's updated Ember CLI, and presumably some other dependencies that were needed as well. So let's keep going. This all looks pretty innocent. I think I'm okay with this. Let's check that it still works. Oh, we have to check that the tests still work, right? And we should check that okay, so I need to run npm install. I need to run Ember serve again. I've changed my dependencies, so I need to run these again. Oh, npm. So I'm going to create a branch just while I'm waiting. Bump Ember to 3.1. And why don't we... Okay, this ran okay, so I'm going to run my test. And over here, I'm going to rerun it just to sanity check. And I'm going to bump Ember. Okay, so let's push that. Okay, how's our testing going? Everything still passes, that's great. And now let's take a look at the app itself. Once that's running, okay, so for refresh. Everything looks okay. I can click on these and something happens. Let's do it. Ember Hacker News. Here's a pull request. And let's keep moving. Okay, so let's start writing tests. I'm now up to the latest version of Ember. I'm happy that I now have all the new testing affordances that I want to show off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my new test. Now, a really common thing that happens to me with writing test files is I never really know where to put them. Or I sometimes put them in the wrong place, or I don't have a great amount of confidence about where my test needs to go. And I'm going to use Ember's own generators to help me here. These components already exist. So let's start with item list component. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Ember's generator to regenerate the component. It's going to give me an option to override the component files that I have, and I'm going to choose not to override them. But it's also going to generate a test file. And it'll put it in the right place, and it'll even seed it with something that looks like a meaningful test. So let's try this. So the way we do this is we call Ember generate. I want to generate a component. And my component name is item list component. Okay. So it's going to offer to override my JavaScript file. I don't want to do that. I'm happy with that file. It's going to offer to override my template. I don't want to do that. I'm happy with that. And now you can see that it's generated a new test file. This is great. Now I don't have to think about where I put this file. It's in the right place. And if I go to tests, integration, components, I can see that there's now a file there. And even better, if I go into that file, it's actually there's a test there and everything. This is great. So let's run this and confirm that the test works. Okay. Oh, okay. So my test is not working. Why is my test not working? Okay, so components can be used in two different forms. They can be used in as a straightforward invocation, or they can be invoked in their block form. If they're invoked in their block form, then we expect whatever we pass in here to be yielded by the component, so as Pat said. So I can easily make this test pass by putting in a yield here. Great. But I don't actually want to yield. I don't ever want to use this component in its block form. So I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to change the test. In fact, I'm just going to rip this whole mode out. I don't care about that mode. I'm not going to be using this in a block context. So I actually really only care about this. Now, the first thing I do when I'm in this type of scenario is I'm going to be writing lots of tests. Not today, but I will write tests in the future. And what I want to do is I don't want to have to repeat myself over and over with this. So one of the first things that I tend to do is I create a variable template. And what I do is I take this out here. and I put it here. So if I write more tests, they're all going to share this. So that's fine. That's just a little bit of hygiene before we get started. The next thing I want to do is, like, this isn't how I use this component in the app. This is not this component takes things and does things with those things. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search in the app where I actually use this component as an exemplar for how I should test it. So here's really the one place, the one type of way this component is used. So I'm going to copy that out of here, and I'm going to put it in here. I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit. Okay. Right. And this is giving me a problem. Now, this is actually something that Lily mentioned in her talk. The framework is kind of helping me here. It's expecting that I define a mark as read action, and the action isn't there, so it's blowing up. And if I look at the stuff that was auto-generated when I generated my test, it actually gave me some hints in how to get around this stuff. So I can see handle any actions with this.set. Okay, this looks exactly like what I want. So I'm going to take that out of here. And my action is actually called mark as read. And that's not real JavaScript, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And because this is a local variable, this shouldn't be a quote. This shouldn't be in quotes. This should be. It should look like that. Okay, and I've actually failed a linting test because that variable isn't being used. So if I just take that off, okay, this is good. I've now set up my test so that I'm able to pass an action in. This looks kind of like the way it's used. Another thing I don't like here is like model. What does model mean in the context of writing these tests? I'm going to get really confused if I use model. So I'm going to go ahead and call this items. Now, in the real world, like we saw when we looked at this front page template, items is a list of things or an array of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the hint that I've been given here to set this property. I'm going to take that down here, and I'm going to say the property I want to set is items. That's the thing that I'm going to be passing in here. And I need that to be an array. We just say an empty array for starters. And okay, it doesn't know what A is. So A is Ember.a. It's the built-in Ember array. So let's see if I can remember what this is. Import A from @Ember/array. Does that sound right to people? Should I save that? Okay, everything passes.
What happens if you don't use Ember array?
If I just use a regular array? Probably nothing here because this is empty. But let's see. Okay, and that's fine. That's because I've got an unused variable. Okay, why don't we continue with the regular array?
It should still work because I think we just modify the component.
If that's turned on in this app, right? Let's keep going, right? Let's see if it breaks. Filmed in front of a live studio audience. Okay, so this test name is terrible now. What I want to do is I want to say, what did I really want? I want to test that this thing renders correctly according to the things that I pass it. So how about if I pass an empty array? And how do we test that? Sorry, so let's see. So what do we expect to see if this, what do we not expect to see if this items array is empty? Well, for starters, I don't expect to see any lines, any horizontal lines. Without knowing anything about this component, I could write a really naive test that just says, like, how many of these lines are there? So let's do that. Let's do that just for fun. At this point, I think I'd like to add another add-on. So I'd like to introduce, would I not? No, I'm not going to introduce another add-on. I'm going to look at Ember's own test helpers to see if there's anything in there I can use. Really what I want to do is I want to count the number of these on the page. I want the count to be 0 if I have nothing in the array. If I have one thing in the array, I want there to be 1. If I have 10 things in the array, I want there to be 10. So let's take a look at this. Ember's test helpers. So I think this might be okay. And there's an API reference here. So I want to find things on the page, and specifically, I know that I want to do like a find all. I'm not looking for just one thing. I'm looking. There could potentially be many of these things. So find all finds all the elements matched by the given selector. Perfect. This is exactly what we need. So I'm going to just take this, and this comes from test helpers. So I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to assert equal find all. The selector for an element is just the element name. So how many HORs there are on a page, and I expect that to be 0. And I'm looking at this assertion. This is pretty meaningless to me. This is basically saying that the component has no content in it. This feels really brittle. This isn't actually what I want to test here. I want to test the number of items in the number of items that we have. So let's do that. And everything passes. That's great. But this is really unsatisfactory. Like, I'm really basing a test on the presence of a HOR tag. This is really, really worrying. Because all I really know about is what I see here. I don't really want to test the presence of this. I really want to test the presence of this. That's the thing that I really care about here. And later on, someone could change the implementation of item component to introduce a HOR. Or maybe someone could introduce HORs outside of the items array. So I'm not liking this. So what we could do is we could use a class selector. So we could do something like this, where we say class equals, and people, like, this selector could be anything, but maybe what we'd like to do is we'd like to distinguish between selectors we use for testing and selectors we use for styling. So what we could do is do something like test double underscore. This is kind of the normal type of thing that people use. And why don't we just add the name of the component? What if we did that? And now what we can do is, rather than looking for HOR tags, we could look for that class. That's a little better. I feel much more comfortable with that. But now I've got a kind of a different problem. When I ship this code to production, I'm littering these test selectors all over my DOM. My customers have to pay the weight of all of those, and this is going to just add up over time. It's also a little bit messy. I don't really like mess. So I think it's time to introduce Ember test selectors. So Ember test selectors is an add-on that Simple Labs put together to kind of overcome this. And if you watch the video that the Ember Map folk did, they give really good and much more detailed explanation than I just did as to why you might choose to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this add-on to the project. We're going to use this. So let's install this. And while we're waiting for that to install, let's look at how we actually use this tool. So, oh, look at that. Yeah?
Could you turn off Flux?
Yes, I could turn off Flux. Thank you. Wow, that's so much better. Thank you. Did we put this PR together? I can't remember. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Okay, great. So Ember test selectors, where are we? Right, so let's visit this page. Let's see how to use it without reading the video. Let's look at GitHub. So here is how we might use it in a component. We add a new data attribute, which is a HTML concept. We can add a data attribute to the component. It'll put it in the DOM. The beauty of this is, so why is this different from classes? Well, semantically, these are quite different. Like classes should be for styling, ideally. These attributes, they're something else. And the other thing that Ember Test Selectors does for us for free is it rips them out of production builds. So whatever noise that I put in here is only going to live in my dev environment and in my test environment. When I ship this to production, it's not going to be in the DOM anymore, which is fantastic. So let's replace this. Let's go test first, right? So let's call this data test, and we'll keep that item component list. That's actually quite a nice name. So we'll do that, and then we'll copy the attribute across into here, and we'll just do that. Now we can get rid of this, and let's check that everything still passes. Sorry, I need to run this again. I'll just kill that as well over here. Cool. Everything passes. Okay, so we've done a lot there. Let's take a look at all the changes that we've done. So definitely we should ship something out of this. So we have changed one of our templates. We've updated a dependency, and we have introduced a new component integration test. I think we should kind of split these into two things. So they don't feel like exactly the same thing. So I'm going to stash, I'm going to check out master, I'm going to update to get the pull request that was merged. So at our first component integration test, I'm going to pop from the stash. I'm going to do this in two parts. I'm going to introduce Ember Test Selectors first. First commit. I like my commits to be completely atomic. Each commit should do only one thing. And then this feels like a nice atomic change. I'm going to take that out. You know what? I don't need this stuff. And I'm a real stickler for things looking right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this out. And I can't stand the way that appears on two lines. I'm sorry. It can just exist. We could equally, that's equivalent to that. And if this was in HTML, so if we had stuck with our HR type thing, we could have done something like this. And from a HTML perspective, semantically, this is exactly the same as this. The only reason we don't do it in here is because we're not in HTML anymore. We're in Ember component land.
Did you get an error if you remove it?
If I remove the true? Yeah. I think you do, depending on where it is. So this is kind of a strange thing. So it really doesn't like that. But if I put this up here, everything is okay. Yeah, I think so. Let's just check. Yeah, I think it's because it's kind of like a positional param, but I hate it. And the reason I hate it is when I see a component and when I see a bunch of things being passed into the component, I want the important things to be at the top. And this is not important in terms of trying to understand how this component works. So I really, really want this to be at the bottom. I generally like this to me is the most important thing that's being passed in here, and then the actions. And I kind of like to separate put the properties first, then put the actions, then put like stuff that I don't really care about, like maybe stuff that's going to go into the DOM, like class names, maybe even class name bindings, depending. I mean, your mileage may vary. This is all very like.
Would it be better to have it as an attribute binding in the component itself?
Yeah, that's also a possibility. So what we could do is we could take that out of here and put it into the JavaScript here, and we could say. So this kind of gets a little bit weird because this is JavaScript land. This needs to be a string. So we could do that, and that would work just as well. Your mileage may vary. Like I feel like this is stuff that goes in the DOM, so I feel like it shouldn't live in JavaScript. I feel like it's surprising to me to find it here. I mean, I still find myself doing it a lot, but I kind of feel like if it's DOM stuff, it should live in the templates.
I guess it should live in the template if it changes in different contexts. So
Yeah.
you're using this like component in different places when we give it different names.
Absolutely.
But if it's always the same,
Yeah.
it's pretty fun with JS.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we move to angle brackets, I wonder if the story is going to, angle bracket components, I wonder if this is going to change. I think at that point, it'll probably want to stay up here. But yeah, I mean, your mileage may vary, but as benevolent dictator for this workshop, I'm going to do it my way, which is that way. Okay, so my second commit is going to be this. I'm going to keep everything. I'm going to leave this here. I don't want to delete it because we may want to come back to it. Let's just check that our tests work. And I'll put together the PR while I'm waiting for that. Okay, so really short, really simple, and let's push that up. Okay, so what do we want to do next? I don't feel like we're done with this component yet. We've written a nice test to test that there are no, like it doesn't render anything if there's no items. So what, right? Let's write a test to test that it renders correctly if there's more than one item. So let's do what we always do and copy paste tests. And now we're kind of reaping the benefit of the fact that I've got this like shared template across my tests. This is really nice. One of the things that I kind of don't like here is like this is a lot of boilerplate. I don't have to do this over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry up the setup of this. I'm not sure what to call this yet. Let's say let's just call this boiler. Let's just call it setup and render. And this is going to take a set of params, let's say. My intent is that this is going to replace all of this stuff. So why don't we do this? And why don't we take all of this out? Okay. And okay, I need this. So I need to pass this in. And what do we call this? Test context, maybe? So it's the this of the test. I mean, I could call it that or self, but like none of those feel particularly nice. I think test context is probably okay. This is the context under which my tests run. I don't know. If anyone can think of a better name, shout it out. And then properties should be these, I'm going to call this properties because that's what it is really. So we could say properties.items, and we could say okay, and that's quite nice. And then this thing should be something like this. What was something like that. And oh, I'm using an await here, so this needs to be an async function. Does that make sense? Okay.
This needs to be updated to the test context.
Yes, absolutely. So this should be test context, that's it. But I haven't really achieved anything yet. I still have to pass all my properties in. So, but I know that this new test is going to have the exact same inputs. The only difference is going to be in items. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some sensible defaults here. So if I don't pass in mark as red, I'm going to do something like that. And now I don't have to pass that in anymore. So this is looking a little bit tighter. So I'm going to do away with all of this over here also. Okay. And now all I need to do for writing this test is I need to focus on setting the items thing in.
You might still need to await, set up and render, because that's going to return.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, yeah, totally reasonable. Let's do that. Let's do that.
But that way you can just return render, you don't need that to be an async function.
Right. Ooh, interesting. So now my asynchronicity is handled in the test rather than in the setup. That feels pretty nice, actually. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Right, so where are we? Let's just check that that all still works, that I haven't broken anything. Okay, looks good. But now what I want to do is I want to populate this with actual items, like a few different items. And really the way I want, to do this is I want to, let's say I pass in like 3 items. And you know, this thing is going to break. And what I need to do is somehow populate this array. Now, there's a number of different ways of doing this. There's add-ons that let us do this, like Mirage and Ember Data Factory Guy do this, but I don't want to get bogged down in introducing yet another add-on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just hack this together a little bit in a kind of a really quick way. Now I know that when I read the modern Ember testing thing, there was something about using the store and creating records. Something about creating records. Okay, and I can see that there's this thing. This is how we create a record. So I'm just going to copy this across. Great Irish Steel, right? So maybe we need a, let's see what this might look like. It's definitely not a user, it's an item. This.owner.lookup, store service create record. That doesn't look right. I think this needs to be an item. And I don't need any of this stuff. Let's take this down. Let's do that. And let's just see if we can make it work for 1 first. How does that look? Have I done something crazy? Right, I have done something crazy. Okay. Right, let's read this. Assertion failed. You have turned on testing mode, which disabled the run loops auto run. You will need to wrap any code with asynchronous side effects in a run. Okay, so I know a little bit about this. I know that if we use the store to create records, we need to wrap that in a run loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out into its own function called like create item. And let me think. So I need this stuff to be here, and I need to say, rather than item down here, I need to like call create item. I need to return. Okay, so in this world, I need to let's just tidy that up. Okay, so I know that this call needs to be in a run loop. So the way we do that in Ember is something like this. I need to import run from Ember runnable, maybe. Run loop? Like that? Run loop.
If you write it the old way, I'll give you a JS hint or tell me what the new way is.
Okay, will this work? Okay, we'll do it this way and then we go back and we try it the old way and see if we take a look at the hint. Okay, so I need to wrap this in a run loop. Right. Remind me, something like that. Okay. Am I going crazy here? I think this is going to be wrong. I think I need to pass the. I need to pass that the test context in again, and I can do that here. Test context.owner.getLookup. Create item then takes this, and let's see. This asynchronicity, I think, is going to cause us some problems.
Yeah, so you're returning something that's not going.
Sorry, yeah. Let's do.
What I think is you might need to pass in the array and have it push the item into the array.
Okay.
Maybe this is why you need the Ember array.
Yeah. Let's see what the error it's given me. Am I getting anything useful at all?
I think it's just infinitely running.
Yeah, maybe. Right.
I think you want to wrap the create network. Yeah, passing type pass there.
Okay. Oh, why don't I pass in the owner here? And this then should be this dot owner. Let's say, let's take this out. Let's just break it down. So, and do I need to wait around for something? I got an error now. Oh yeah, this is nice. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so it hasn't blown up, but it hasn't done what I want either. I think this needs to be async.
So the return needs to be outside the room.
But then the item would need to be inside.
But you can do that item outside.
Can I do something like this? If in doubt, just keep putting awaits.
I don't think Ember Run Loop knows to return things that you're returning from the run all the way up.
Right.
So this is what I was saying, you might need to pass in the array. So you're
Got it.
into the array inside the loop.
So what? So could I do that?
I think so.
Like, would that be the same as passing in rather than
Create access to the async, and you have to await that in your test. You can't just insert it straight to the array at that point.
You're returning await just out remove that return and do an await. I don't know if running returns it.
No idea. Do you need a real item?
I do, yeah. I don't really know. I don't know, but I'm going to need one in a few minutes. Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. Yeah.
just wrap the test in a run. Like the internals of the test.
Right, let's do that.
That's all.
Let's do that.
Just around the.
I hate myself. Uh, okay, so I'm going to expect that there's one of these. So I'm running in a run loop. I don't want the thing to just crash before it does all this stuff. I can now back out of all of this nonsense. I might actually need that. Don't need this, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this. And I'm going to use... Yeah, okay, cool. So take that out. And damnation, okay. Expected 1, result 0. Right. Rory, could you take a look at that and tell me what I'm doing wrong there?
So I think you should pass in the owner and then just wrap the store create record and run and return.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, and do I need to do something out here?
You should just wait the setup, just pass in the...
Wait, setup and render. Okay, I'm really doubting myself here. I'm going to put a debugger. I really thought this would work. If it's that.
I don't want to be the person who I'm just always going to throw that as, is that working?
Cool. Oh, okay, so this is interesting. I put a debugger in, and I can see that the thing is there. So what's going on? Have I just written a bad test here? Yeah, let's just take a look at this thing.
I'm not sure that's
Probably
right.
true, it's just there. If you look in the DOM, what's actually rendered.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So I'm going to rerun this guy. Oh, look at that. Data test item component.
Yeah, the equals to true. It's not actually got a value in the DOM when you do that.
Jack. That was a terrible suggestion. Okay, let's see. Are we... Oh, okay. Let's see. Right. Okay. Let's take the debugger out and see if it still works. Chris, you're off the hook. Jack, you're on the hook. Whew. Okay. So, but that's not what we want to test. We want to test like a few of them. Okay. So let's see. Let's push our luck here and see if we can create 3 of these things. And see if there are, in fact, 3 of them on the page. This seems like a better, if I pass an items array with values. Okay, I changed the name of the test, and I was running just one specific test, so the hash changed. So if I take that off, it'll run all the tests, and it should find that one. Great, everything passes. Okay, let's take a few steps back and like try and understand what went wrong there. I got myself into a bit of trouble because I copied a test that I thought was good, but I was testing that something didn't exist. And so when I changed the functionality around so that something should have been there, it wasn't working the way I expected. So like I already had a bad test at this point, which is kind of unfortunate. Maybe I shipped my original test too soon. Maybe I should have waited until I had both a positive and a negative example. So whoever called out ship it, you were a little too early. Okay. I'm sure the PR was not approved by anyone, so I'm sure that was caught at review stage. Okay, so right, so then what happened then? we needed some mechanism of populating this with like realistic item models. And we got into a bit of a tizzy over this. The fact that like this is not at all obvious to me in any way, shape, or form. Like this function is kind of horrible. It's doing a lot of magic. Definitely there are add-ons like Ember Data Factory Guy that make all of this much easier and hide it from you. So like if you find yourself doing this kind of stuff, like back away. Okay, so we should definitely ship this, right?
Should it?
Ship it? Cool. So what I'll do is I'll stash out of where we are. Check out master again. Update. Let's see. Okay. Pop that out. Okay, that's cool. So everything we've done so far is kind of DOM based. And it's interesting and all. But I'd imagine that what you really want to hear about is the action tests. The action tests, I think, are more interesting. So
I think we might actually be running out of time.
Okay.
So is there any way that we can have follow-up things where people might want to do tests on their own time after?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is an open repository. Anybody can produce PRs. I'll be happy to look at any PRs that come in and critique them, offer ways of improving them. I'll also put together 2 more tests and add them as separate PRs so that people can see where this workshop would have taken us.
I'm going to throw in something that Lorcan didn't know anything about, but if anybody does open a PR with a test, even if it doesn't get merged, they'll get one of those bags with the EmberConf logo, last year's EmberConf logo on it. So open a PR, do some tests.
Cool.
You can have a bag, Lorcan.
Will I?
Okay, so that is everything. Let's say thanks and a great round of applause to both those speakers because they were awesome.